My name is Mia, and I'm 23 years old. It's kind of funny. Every time I hear my own name, I think it sounds like someone I don't really know. I work at a topless bar called the Velvet Haze just outside our town. It's nothing I'm ashamed of, but I'd be lying if I said it's always a dream to admit to. I know a lot of people judge me for it. I'm tall, and I guess I'm beautiful. At least many have said so. And I have a sort of street smart way of moving through the world. I've had problems with panic attacks since my teenage years. Sometimes I go through periods of really dark thoughts. It's like being in a room with no windows at times, but I've learned to handle it better over the years. Nobody's perfect. And I don't expect my boyfriend Ethan to be perfect either. But he's the closest thing to a good person I've ever known. Ethan is 28, an engineer, and there's no denying that he's smart. Really smart. When we met, he was already well educated, had a good job, a stable economy. But what struck me most was how he looked at me, as if I were the funniest, most interesting person in the room. He said he fell for my sense of humor and my looks, and I guess that's true. But I also think he appreciates the fact that I don't take any crap. I can be pretty tough when I have to. It's interesting with Ethan. I'm not the typical girl people might imagine an engineer with his background would choose. His family is well educated, upper class, quite stiff in their manner. I've met many different kinds of people in my life, but rarely anyone as composed and self-assured as his mother, Janet. She's a doctor, specialized in some advanced field I can hardly pronounce. His father, Thomas, is the CEO of a big industrial company. Both sisters, Alexis and Brianna, are also successful. Alexis works in advertising, holding some high-ranking position, and Brianna is a lawyer. I suspect they all earn more in a month than I've made during all my years at the bar. But that's not what bothers me. It's that they've decided I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy of their beloved son and brother. Sahara. Ethan and I have been together for a little over a year now. We're really in love, and it's a feeling I never thought I'd experience in this way. I've had boyfriends before, but never anyone like him. He's caring, funny, and he genuinely cares about how I feel. Unfortunately, his family is a whole different story. From the very first time I met them, it was tense. They probably expected someone like themselves, someone well-educated from a nice family, someone with status, not someone who works serving drinks at a bar where men stare at my breasts. I remember exactly how Janet looked at me, as if I were some kind of germ on her shiny marble table. Alexis and Brianna weren't much better. Thomas kept up appearances, acted polite on the surface, but you could tell he had no idea how to categorize me in his internal system of who is worth what. Well, that's not entirely true anymore. Over time, it turned out Thomas at least didn't want to control Ethan's life. He said it himself at one point. Ethan is an adult. If he loves you, we shouldn't interfere. That earned him some respect from me. But back then, at the start, I mostly felt he was stiff and hesitant. Then there were their little projects to break us up. They tried everything. First, they tested simple tricks, invited Ethan to family gatherings without including me, whispered things to him when I couldn't hear. But he's not stupid. He noticed what they were trying to do. When that didn't work, they became more direct. Once, when I was in their enormous living room, one of those salons with a white sofa and huge windows, I heard Alexis say to Brianna while I was in the room, "I guess some people will do anything for money. Working topless isn't exactly a qualification." They probably thought I would feel ashamed and leave. Instead, I turned to them and said, some people build their careers thanks to daddy's connections. Others work hard to put food on the table. But maybe you don't know anything about that. Then I smiled, and it was clear they were surprised. They certainly expected me to turn timid and quiet. But I have no problem putting people in their place when they deserve it. They kept trying in secret. A cousin of Ethan's, a guy named Lucas, suddenly showed up at my job one evening. He sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and tried to charm me. "I've heard my cousin has really good taste in women," he said, examining me as if I were a piece of furniture at an auction viewing. When I didn't fall for the compliments, he became more direct. He tried to lure me with money, offering me a better life if I left Ethan. I just stared at him with raised eyebrows. "Do you think I'm for sale?" I said. "Is that what your family told you? That I can be bought?" He looked confused. I continued. "Go home and tell your little family that I'm not buying their shit." And by the way, let them know I'm aware of what they're doing. I thought he'd get angry, but he just looked ashamed and left the bar without another word. Of course, I told Ethan about it. He was furious. He called his family and confronted them. I only heard his side of the conversation, but I understood they denied everything. Lucas was just curious, they probably said. We would never try to bribe Mia. But Ethan didn't believe their lies. He told them firmly, "Stop sabotaging us. You're disappointing me." After that, the tension got even worse. Every time Ethan and I were invited to a dinner or family event, there were always little remarks, little jabs. Brianna, the lawyer, was particularly skilled at wrapping insults in polite words. Alexis sometimes tried to ignore me entirely, acting like I wasn't there. And Janet, the mother, could give me looks sharp enough to cut glass. Thomas, on the other hand, seemed more neutral. Sometimes he gave me a small, encouraging smile. I think he might have realized how badly his family was behaving. One evening, at a birthday dinner for Thomas, I happened to overhear a phone call. I was standing in the hallway behind a half-open door. I was on my way to the bathroom, but stopped when I heard Alexis's voice. She didn't know I was there, and she spoke very softly and intimately. Words like, "I miss you. Still thinking about yesterday, I'm so sore. You make me forget my boring life," leaked through the crack in the door. I couldn't hear the entire conversation, but enough to understand she was having someone on the side. There was no doubt about it. The tone, the giggle, that certain breathiness. I recognized it from how people sound when they're turned on and hiding something. And I went back to the living room and kept a straight face. Alexis joined us a few minutes later, smiling broadly at everyone, kissing her fiancé, some stiff guy named Mark, and pretending nothing happened. It was almost comical, but at the same time, it made me angry. Here was a family constantly talking about morals, status, the right kind of women for Ethan, while they themselves obviously didn't play by the rules. Later that evening, when Alexis started poking at me about my job again, she said something like, "Mia, you must be good at putting up with disgusting stares. I could never stand being objectified like that." I took a deep breath and replied, "Yeah, Alexis. I guess it takes a backbone to stand by your choices. Maybe you should think about that. I mean, before you criticize me, maybe ask yourself if you're as loyal in your relationships as you are quick to judge others." The room fell silent. Alexis looked confused. I leaned forward and whispered, "Maybe you should stop attacking me, or else your fiancé might find out what you're up to during your little phone calls." She stared at me, her eyes widening. She understood immediately. I smiled and left the room. Later that night, when Ethan and I got home, we sat on the couch and I told him everything. I explained that I knew something about Alexis that could shatter their facade. He was shocked at first, then sad. "Mia, I don't know what to say. I'm so tired of their games. I don't want you to have to threaten anyone. This is getting crazy." I agreed with him, but I was so tired of being treated like dirt. I'm no angel, but I don't deserve to be ridiculed for my job or my background. And I felt sorry for poor Mark, her fiancé. He deserved to know. A few days later, while Ethan was at work, I went to Alexis's office. I got the address from their family calendar. They're so organized, they write down everything. I showed up unannounced, went into reception, and greeted them kindly, saying I was her future sister-in-law and had something urgent to discuss. Alexis was surprised to see me step into her office. We were alone inside. She started right in. "What do you want, Mia?" I leaned against her desk and said, "I want you to stop. Stop trying to sabotage my relationship with Ethan. Otherwise, Mark will find out about your little affair. I'm not interested in being your scapegoat." She turned pale, sat down, and stared at me. "You're bluffing," she hissed. I shook my head. "I wish I were. But I heard you on the phone, Alexis. I recognize that tone. Don't you think Mark would be curious to know why you sound so happy with someone other than him?" She fell completely silent. I took a step back. "Consider this a warning," I said. "I don't want to mess up your life, but you've messed with mine for months. I've had enough." As I left, my heart was pounding. I felt dirty sinking to their level, but also relieved that I finally had some leverage. 2 days later, Alexis called me late at night. She sounded agitated. "I don't know what you think you heard, but it's not what you think. Please don't tell Mark. I sighed and said, just stop. Leave me and Ethan alone. She said she would. I didn't fully believe her, but I hoped. But I changed my mind. The more I thought about it, the more I felt that Mark deserved to know. Why should I protect a cheater who treated me like garbage? So I made sure Mark found out. It wasn't hard. I sent an anonymous letter. Yes, it's ridiculously dramatic but effective, where I wrote what I heard, the time, the place, and suggested he check her phone records. Enough details so he'd understand this wasn't made up. A week later, I heard through Ethan that Alexis and Mark had broken off their engagement. Ethan was shocked. He realized I meant business. He got angry at me for doing it. Why couldn't you just leave it? He shouted. Why did you have to destroy them? I answered angrily, destroy them? They've tried to destroy me from day one. I'm sorry I'm not the prim and proper woman they dreamed of for you, but you have no idea how hard they've pushed me down. I'm tired of being their punching bag. Ethan looked sad. I understand that you're tired, Mia. I hate that they hurt you, but you just tore my sister's life apart. I stared at him. She's an adult, Ethan. She was cheating. I didn't lie. I didn't make it up. I just told the truth. He looked at the floor. I know. It's just, my family is falling apart. After this, the entire family system collapsed. Janet and Brianna were furious with me. They yelled at Ethan on the phone, calling me various names. Alexis was in shock. She stopped calling, didn't get in touch. Thomas, the father, called Ethan and tried to mediate. He said, Ethan, I understand you love Mia, but does it have to go this far? Ethan replied, Dad, you went too far. You tried to buy off my girlfriend, you've insulted her, treated her like garbage. You got what you deserved. It was the first time I heard Ethan defend me so strongly to his family. He later told me he'd cut ties with them, except for Thomas. I held him, feeling relieved, but also sad. I never wanted it to go this far. I love Ethan. I want him to have his family, but not at the cost of my dignity. As time passed, things settled. Ethan stopped attending family gatherings. He missed one holiday, then another. They stopped inviting him. I kept working at the bar, but I noticed I'd lost my enthusiasm. I was tired of always being cheerful and attractive. I wanted something more. I started thinking about going back to school. It was something I'd thought about for a long time, but never had the guts to do. Maybe it was time to change my life, to cut ties with the past. Ethan supported me in that decision. He said, Mia, you're smart. I know you can handle whatever you set your mind to. Why not pursue an education in something you're passionate about? I'd never pictured myself in a classroom, but the idea appealed to me. I wanted to take control of my life, get a fresh start. The bar job had always been something I'd considered temporary anyway. I wasn't happy there anymore. I quit the Velvet Haze after a few weeks of thinking it over. The owner was pissed, but I didn't care. I felt free. Meanwhile, the conflict with Ethan's family continued in the background. They called him, sent messages. Brianna threatened to take action if I didn't stop destroying the family. I laughed at that. What would she do? Sue me for revealing Alexis's infidelity? There are no laws against telling the truth. Ethan urged me not to respond to their nonsense. He told them to leave me alone. Eventually, they gave up. At least for the time being. We decided to move. Not far, just to the next county, but enough to gain some distance. We found a small apartment in an area with a good community college nearby. It wasn't as luxurious as Ethan's old neighborhood, but it was cozier, more relaxed. I enjoyed walking the streets there. No judgmental looks, no one who knew my story. Ethan helped me apply for a few courses. I decided to start with general subjects, build a foundation. I had no idea what I wanted to become, but starting school felt like a step forward. I remember the first day I went to class. I was nervous, my panic anxiety creeping in, but Ethan encouraged me. I took a deep breath and entered the building. No flashy clothes, no prejudices, just people who wanted to learn. I felt almost normal in a good way. Ethan also began changing how he viewed his family. He realized he had idealized them. Yes, they were successful, but also manipulative. He had let their approval guide him for years. Now he let go of that. He still called his dad sometimes. Thomas was the one who tried to understand. He apologized to both me and Ethan, and we managed a fairly normal rapport. After a few months in the new place, I started sleeping better. My dark thoughts were still there, but calmer. I had a new routine, new possibilities. I made new friends at school. Not close friends yet, but acquaintances I could talk to about normal things. Not drama and family fights, but assignments, future plans, movies, and music. It felt refreshing. Ethan was doing well at work and earned a good income. We managed fine financially. He encouraged me to keep studying. Sometimes in the evenings, we talked about the future, about maybe moving even further away later, maybe to a bigger city once I finished my education. Maybe I'd become something completely different than anyone expected. The thought gave me peace. But sometimes the family popped up like an unpleasant shadow in the background. Alexis sent an email once. She wrote that I ruined the best thing that ever happened to her. The problem was, she ruined it herself. I read the email and sighed. I never replied. What would I say? She was the one who cheated. She betrayed Mark, not me. I only happened to reveal it. She would have to live with the consequences of her actions, just like I had to live with the consequences of my job choices, my background, my relationship with Ethan. Brianna tried calling Ethan, but he no longer answered. He said they made their choice when they tried to tear us apart. That made me feel warm inside. I felt loved, seen. His loyalty was absolute. That was more than I'd ever gotten from anyone before. Janet, the mother, I never heard from again. Not directly, at least. Ethan said she sent birthday cards with stiff greetings, but never mentioned me. He didn't bother to reply. Thomas, however, called sometimes. He asked how we were doing. Ethan told him I'd started studying. Thomas sounded impressed. Look at that. Mia has ambition. Good for her. I sat nearby and smiled wryly. It was about time someone there saw beyond the prejudices. Even though I knew nothing would ever be perfect, our new life felt like a victory. I had beaten them in my own way. I hadn't let their crap crush me. I'd stood up for myself and for my relationship with Ethan. Maybe I went too far with Alexis, but I can't regret it. She would have done the same or worse to me if she could. I'm sure of that. Life moved on. I attended my classes, wrote essays, read books. I especially liked a psychology course. Maybe it was because I'd had my own mental issues, but I found it interesting to understand how people work, why they hurt others, why they deceive and betray. I thought about Alexis, Brianna, and Janet. Were they unhappy inside, trapped in a role they were expected to play? Maybe, but that doesn't excuse their behavior. I'm not going to be their therapist. I have my own life to take care of. Ethan felt better without his family constantly looming over him. He was calmer, slept better too. We laughed more again, and he loved that I was trying something new. You're so brave, Mia, he often said. You came from a hard place, but you always find a way forward. Those words meant a lot to me. I think his family saw me as a parasite, but in reality, I've always fought on my own. I've never exploited him. Maybe that's why he loved me, because I didn't need him. I chose him. When I look back on everything that happened this year, the intrigue, the fights, the tears, I realize it shaped me. I'm stronger now. I know my worth. I know I don't have to bend to some snobs. I think Ethan realized he doesn't need his family's approval to love me. If they can't accept who he chose, that's their loss. One evening, as we ate dinner in our little kitchen, we talked about the future again. I said, maybe after I finish studying here, we can move to another state. Start over even freer. Ethan took my hand, smiled, and said, whatever you want, Mia. I'm with you. They weren't grand, pompous words, just a simple promise to stand by my side. And that was enough. My old job at the bar feels far away now. I don't miss the drunken customers, the tired compliments, the cold nights when I walked home alone wondering if my life would ever change. It's not perfect now either, but I feel like I'm on a path I chose. Ethan is my partner on that path, not my savior. We're two adults who chose each other despite the obstacles. And the Cartwright family? They'll have to manage their own split. Alexis is single again. Maybe she'll learn something from it. Brianna likely remains the career woman with the sharp tongue. Janet lives in her perfect facade. Thomas tries to keep in touch with his son, careful attempts at reconciliation. Maybe one day we can sit down to a meal and talk like human beings. Maybe not. I can't be bothered to care right now. I have my studies, my life, my goals. What matters is that Ethan and I are a team. We survived their attempts to crush us. We moved, we changed course, we freed ourselves. And here I am, Mia Holloway, former topless waitress, now a student, and perhaps soon something entirely different. I wake up with Ethan by my side and feel that life doesn't have to be a dark chamber. I can turn on the light myself. In the end, I didn't just win over their prejudices. I won over my own fears. I can be much more than their projection screen. I'm me, and that's enough.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.